Hi everyone, thank you for those that are joining. We're just going to give a couple of moments for others to join, and we'll start the webinar in a couple of moments. So I can see the numbers coming in at the moment, so just give it another sort of half a minute. Okay, look, the numbers are looking good. So I'm sure we'll get some people joining as we go through. It's that time of day. For some, I know where they'll be grabbing lunch, etc., and then hopefully be dialing in as we go through. But for those of you that have made it through, thank you for joining webinar on removing friction and improving employee experience with the power of data. You're joined today by Volker Jacobs, founder and CEO of TI People, and myself, Matthew Bennett, Solution Consultant Director at Applaud. We'll do a little bit more about intros as we move through the session. In case you didn't believe us, you can see there just to prove that it is ourselves here presenting to you guys today. So look, the idea is we're going to run about 45 minutes. We've got some slides to walk through. Hopefully we've got some really good, powerful information and content to go through with you guys today. Please jump in with questions as we go. I will I guess look at those and share those and ask them as we go through. So don't save them to the end in case we run out of time. The session actually is really co-hosting today from me and Volker. So I'm going to start by handing over to Volker and really letting him run through his part of the session whilst I steer as well. So it's great to see the chat starting as well. So please keep that. And actually, I should say, if you can ask questions in the Q&A option on Zoom, that would be really helpful for myself as well. So thank you all, and let's get going. So over to you, Volker.
Matt, thank you very much, and hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Volker Jacobs. I'm the CEO and founder of TI People, a consultancy specialized in applying employee experience improvements in large organizations. And I'm also using data to actually make my points. And that data stems from Found. Found is a spin out of TI People. It runs an employee experience intelligence solution. And so we are measuring basically the experience of people in large organizations. And that is a huge, huge database, 4 million data points in it. And I'm going to show some of that data because it's, I think, quite convincing to make my point. Yeah, exactly. On that next slide, there's a question for you guys that brings up the context of this conversation. The question is, have you ever heard this promise or even made it? And if you click once more, Matt, then you'll see the promise. With digital HR, we don't bring a new HR system, we bring a better experience to managers and employees. If you have heard this promise before, you're not alone. So that's the standard that we see and hear, and also and with our friends from Applaud, see and hear more and more often. Bringing in HR technology is much more about the end user than it was in like, let's say 10 or 20 years ago. So it's a much more end user centric system that HR is using, and it's about the experience that these end users are having with the new system or through the new system. So it's and that is the theme. And what I have to say is, in many years of research in this field, it's a hard promise to keep and actually to hold true on, because we don't quite know what a better experience to managers and employees mean. We think we might, but we don't. That's really a problem. So the context of this session is, if you are in front of making HR technology decisions and you think about them in the context of a better experience for managers and employees, how do you do it? How do you actually pick the right battles and so forth. So I'll try to explain why it's so hard. On the next slide, that's the only really big teaching and conceptual slide. But this is one that I think we should really go through. If we are promising to provide better experiences to managers and employees, we at least have to know what a better experience really means. And the transition of the slide hasn't worked perfectly, but really you can see it. What a better experience means is it's about a person, me, and I have my personal needs and goals. Has to do with identity, with freedom, with creativity, and so forth. And all these values, my personal needs and goals, I carry with me all the time, and I bring with me to work. And work for us is actually an ecosystem. We're talking about the work ecosystem because what we experience at work is not linear for most of the cases. That's a big learning point, that we've learned employee experience very much from customer experience. And in customer experience, most of the experiences are linear. So I'm buying something, I'm inquiring into a service, but really it's a linear thing. I'm starting it and it's coming to an end. Whereas work is very different. I go to work every day. I have many, many interactions at work. And it's an ecosystem with which I'm interacting. And mostly it's non-linear experience that I'm having. So therefore, we're talking about it's me, my needs and goals, and my activities that actually form my experiences. And then we have data. No, we have to stay on this slide for another half minute. Then we have data. And with data, we can prove that if these interactions that I'm having at work are meeting my needs and are frictionless for me to go through, then I'm satisfied. And then I'm intending to stay longer with the company and I can work more productively. So the green arrows on this slide, we can prove with data. Our database can just show that. The red arrows as well. So if the opposite is true, my needs are not met, I experience friction, then I'm dissatisfied, I'm less productive, and I might leave. And the discipline that we master, if you will, to do that is EX Intelligence. EX Intelligence shows you the activities and which type of experience they leave behind for people, and what that does to people's productivity and their intent to stay with the company. That's EX Intelligence that I'll show many data points about. The other last important thing here is to do EX Intelligence, we have to address a part in the brain of people to figure out what their experience is. That's called the episodic memory. It's a different part of the brain than the semantic memory, where overall values like, this is a good employer, I have great career opportunities, the leadership team is good. That is semantic memory. It's a part of the brain where over time you store your opinions and your sentiment. The episodic memory is where you store how you went through a situation. So experiences happen when you go through a situation. It's stored on a certain part of your brain. It's called the episodic memory. So that's basically the theoretical background slide. And now let's use that knowledge for our case here. We want to bring better experience to managers and employees that use a new HR system. On the next slide is really the challenge. Pick your battles. We've seen experience at work are all activities that I'm having as I go through them and how I perceive them. That's really a lot. and you won't be able to boil the ocean. So the trick really is, and that's, I think, in front of an Applaud implementation or when you buy new technologies, you have to pick your battles. And that's what I'm trying to show with data on the next slide. The next slide shows, first of all, how it's an illustration of these experiences that people have at work. It's our EXI, EX Intelligence framework. This is showing a subset of the experiences that people have when they go to work. Sorry, one back, please. This is showing how experiences break down for people when they go to work. The upper part is showing the journey stages: explore, consider, begin, work, separate, reconnect. The biggest part of it is work. When I go to work, that has many, many moments. The second section is the moments of work. Moments are describing the context in which I experience touch points. Touch points are the bottom part. We cut them into 3 buckets. First one is human touch points, then digital touch points, physical and other touch points. And this is only a subset. It's about 50 moments. Our total EXI framework has 110 moments. And that describes the generic experience of people that go to work in large organizations. I'm not going into the details here, but really what this shows, and now Matt, if you could click once, what it shows is it's a lot, right? So it's a lot of experience that people are having. And if I'm promising with my new HR system, I'm making experiences better, it's hard to believe that I can really do that for all of the experiences. One more click, please. So let's focus on one of the digital touch points. That's the HR system. The HR system in our framework is a touch point. And let's take a look at which experiences I can improve through an HR system. One more click. And we see, well, I think we see, yeah, we see which moments of people that go to work I can influence with a new HR system. Click one more, and my interpretation is already on it. Still a lot, right? So still many contexts in which HR systems and apps are used. You see a context of receive pay, a context of pursue a promotion, a context of have a last day. So there's a lot of experiences, of context, moments that people have that an HR system can influence. And here again, we have to be very specific which experiences we are going to be able to impact and improve with a new HR system. On the next click is showing another dimension that's hard. I hope you can see it. On my screen, it barely shows, but there's one human touch point on the left, very much to the bottom. It says manager and supervisor. That's another touch point in our framework. And as you can see, and maybe not surprisingly, managers and supervisors are part of the experience in many, many, many moments, right? So you go to work, you interact with your manager and supervisor, and that has an influence on your experience in these moments that you see on top. So almost all of these moments are influenced by supervisors and managers. From an HR tech perspective, HR system perspective, so you have made the promise that your HR system will improve the experience of people at work. Now you're competing against other touch points that are also influencing experiences in the very same moments that you want to influence with your HR system. And therefore, if you click, Matt, this is almost the villain, right? So there's other touch points, and the supervisor manager is just an example of it, that are also influencing the experiences of people. And remember, experiences are what the individual is experiencing when going through the day of work with all the interactions. It's not what you think the experience is. So from their perspective, the supervisor and manager may be just much more impactful in providing an experience than your HR tech system. And that is another dimension that you have to have on mind. How much can you with your HR system actually influence the experience, because there's other influences on them as well. So on the next slide is yet another dimension. So if you then had data on hand to really know how what the experience actually is that people are having, at a certain touch point, I've picked a touch point, HR help desk. So the touch point of HR help desk is providing an experience. You see that here on to the left, has a total satisfaction score of 68% positive, and that compares to benchmark, in this case 65%. So you're doing okay. But now let's see in which context the HR help desk is very positive versus not so positive. On the right-hand side, you see 3 moments that the HR help desk is influencing. The first one is when managers manage or lead their team. When people receive their pay is the second one. And when people request or use HR services, it's the third one. In these 3 moments, the HR help desk is really very different in performance, right? So across all roles in the company, you have a 75% CSAT score, which is really good in the context of when managers use the help desk when they lead their teams, or when people request into HR services. Whereas for received pay, it's only a 56% CSAT score, which is not good. So the next click would bring up the point. Number 1, we should know how we're doing against benchmark. And number 2, we should know what our HR tech enabled services like a help desk is doing in different contexts and pick out the ones where it's not working. So if I had to make an investment in HR tech at this point, I would probably look into the HR tech that helps to improve the experience with the HR help desk in the context of receiving pay. On the next slide, that's the last dimension of data. Not only do we have to do with real HR service moments, click one more, Matt, and we'll see that, can you, I don't know.
Just bear me one moment. There you go.
There we go. And one more, please, because I think
one more. Yeah.
What we see here on this slide is one more click. So what we see here on this slide is request and use HR service is just a moment among many other moments. And this HR service moment, it compares to other moments in 2 dimensions. On the horizontal, that probably is hard to read on this slide. On the horizontal, it shows the overall satisfaction with the moment. So the more to the right, the better. And request use HR services is a moment that is more than median. So it's okay. It's okay in satisfaction, but compare it to the other ones that are much more up on this picture on the vertical dimension. The vertical dimension is the impact that an experience in HR services has. And the impact is much lower than, for example, when people take leave or return to work, or when they pursue a new job or role. So it's not the most impactful experiences that people are having when they use HR services. So again, when you bring in a new HR tech system, and that new HR tech system is there to improve the experience of people, be aware that your relative impact is not so high. So don't overpromise, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And on the next slide is now more or less the solution. When you want to do this, when you want to fulfill your digital HR promise of bringing better experience to managers and employees in the context of a digital HR transformation or a system implementation as part of that, then there's 3 things that probably you should have on mind. One click, and we will see hopefully the first. You should measure and know what the experience is that people are having, so you can prioritize and pick your battles. One more click. So that's the pick your battle step. The next one is you should implement your system, of course, but then remeasure to see if what you've implemented is actually improving experiences somewhere. One more click that shows that the number 3 thing, the call out. It is about closing the feedback loop. So if you're making a promise, be sure that you can fulfill it. And that's the thing. There's a question I'm seeing: how do you measure the value of employee experience? We are measuring the impact of employee experiences. So we're measuring the quality of the experience. Is it good or bad? With a CSAT score. It's a validated, normalized way of doing it. So that's how we measure the experience. And now, how do we understand the impact that experience is having? We build regression models against an outer variable. The outer variable that we most often use is engagement. But we can use other outer variables. It could be attrition. It could be the customer experience if it's a sales or service function. So it could be other outer variables, but the standard that this whole system is normalized for is engagement, and that's how we do that. Hopefully that answers the question. And then one more slide, and then I think we can conclude and discuss. What I think is important to take away is don't try to boil the ocean. It's not working. So there's this thing of I bring better experiences to people is just not specific enough. You have to know where you can actually have an impact on the experience of people with new digital HR initiatives. Know which ones they are and know it with data is the first. And what you have to know, it breaks down basically in 3 questions. Number 1, which moments actually matter to employees and managers? Without knowing that, you'll allocate resources in the wrong way. Number 2, you have to understand which of these moments are providing a bad experience so that an investment and improvement actually has an impact. And number 3, you need to know in which of these moments that you can have an impact on, digital HR actually can move the needle significantly because of the other influences on those moments and touch points. That's really what I'd love you to take away. And then on the last page is just the QR code that you can use to either connect with me if you want to continue the conversation, or you can also see a demo video of this solution that I just showed a couple of screenshots on. You can just take a look at those.
A question, Volker, and I think it's a follow-up really, but and apologies if you sort of answered it, but how are you preventing survey fatigue with this? How are you ensuring it's not just becoming another survey? What sort of mechanics are you using to gather this data?
Yeah, perfect question. We've done a lot of research about that, right? So like, first of all, we've, for example, done a research of how to forego surveying people. We've done a big exercise with Microsoft Viva Insights to see if we can predict the experience of people by looking at the behaviors of people when they go through their Microsoft Office tools. So like, I don't know, can I conclude about an experience that people are having when, for example, they have manager one-on-ones twice a week, or every 4 weeks, right? So the outcome of that big pilot was you cannot. You can only predict the experience of people when you ask them about the experience. So survey it is. And then, of course, comes the relevant question, how do you prevent survey fatigue? Survey fatigue is caused by two things. Number one, I'm asking questions that the survey respondent finds irrelevant. And number two, the survey respondent sees that the company is not taking action upon the result. That's the two by far biggest drivers of survey fatigue: irrelevant questions and no visible action. So the third that you suggest basically with your question, Matt, which is I'm asking too often, is not causing survey fatigue.
Yep.
People are happy to provide feedback when it's relevant questions and action is taken. That's and now to your real question, which is how do we make it easy for people? Of this big framework of experiences, our database knows which, let's say, of the 50 moments that you've seen on the framework, which 15 moments are theoretically relevant for a person like Matt. So we would put in front of you 15 moments out of the 50. And then we would ask you, of these moments that should be theoretically relevant to you, Matt, please choose 3 that you want to give us feedback on. So it's a mix of our database knows what should be relevant for you, plus you can pick and choose those that you really want to give feedback on because you've experienced it recently and have something to say about it. That's a mechanism that we've built in and validated in our survey logic.
That's great, thank you. And as we move on to sort of my section of the presentation, I think it's really clear, you know, when we are working with customers that have been through the process, the journey that Volker's been describing, opposed to customers that are just going at it, you know, straight from the start. You know, we need to improve our employee X and we're just going to go straight to market and buy a platform. You know, we're going to go and boil the ocean on day one. It's very, very easy for us to see the difference between the two types of customers. And what I'm going to do now in this section is introduce Applaud, what we do, and also talk a bit about actually what that journey can look like. When you understand what your journey needs to be, you understand the moments that matter and where you need to start and how we can approach that from a technical perspective and a platform perspective. As I said, you know, I'm Solution Consultant Director at Applaud. I work with our customers essentially to better understand their requirements and their challenges, and of course, that all important tech landscape. This then allows us to ensure our platform can best fit their needs, obviously always linking back to actually all the great stuff we've heard in the first half of this session. My background is all in HR technology, and I'm proud to work for both Liverpool Victoria and Lloyd's TSB before joining Applaud. But ultimately, you know, we want your colleagues to have a seamless and consumer-like experience when interacting with their HR services through the life cycle stages of their career. So thinking onboarding to offboarding and everything in between, you know, all of those moments we've just been speaking about, all of those touch points we've just been speaking about, whether it's something as simple as booking holiday, login time, or something far more meaningful like when you're transferring roles or relocating, or purely just consuming content or wanting to understand where to go to find, we are here to try and improve that for your colleagues. And that's what we do. You know, we look at it from a different way, I guess, to those core HCM, those core HR platform providers, by improving these experiences for your employees. You know, we will really look to enable your teams to focus on their core jobs rather than just sending and responding to employee requests, which is, you know, so often what happens and what ends up being HR's job. Important thing about the Applaud employee experience platform is, it's ultimately about building in fast. We're a no code environment. The idea is you don't use dev resource to build out within the platform, and we can initiate change quickly and try and jump on to some of those challenges and issues that we've just been spoken about quickly, and you can start to see the improvements and ROI of the platform. We were founded in 2008. Ivan and Duncan, our co-founders, still very much hands-on today, and we're a UK business with global reach as far as our customer base goes. So we've obviously heard from Volker on how we'll work through those priorities with the customers. So once a customer understands their priorities, what do we need to do next? Well, based on the work we do following up with those customers, we tend to see an evolution as they progress through their employee experience program. Remember that point, you don't need to boil the ocean on day one is so important. But we do need a starting point. And what we tend to see and what the priorities tend to show us is, something as simple as having all your services in one place. The importance of being able to go and find, how long do our employees spend looking for the right content, policy, or system? How many tickets, back to our HR tickets, does it create, or emails, or poor engagement? All of these are data points we see with our customers before they have Applaud. One place to access it all from is fundamentally the minimum our employees expect. Doesn't have to be deep, complex integration. Quite simply can be a hub or a portal. We come across these every day in the consumer world when interacting with online sites and apps. You're often start in one place and be redirected, but as long as that's seamless, it's well thought through and it's concise, as consumers, we usually don't have a problem with that. And that's exactly what we can achieve in the very early stages of an employee experience program. And clearly, through everything we talk about here, it's thinking about the different channels of adoption as well. And mobile enablement and employees being able to get in easily is something that's super important as well to reduce that friction. But can we do more as we move through the Applaud value chain, as I call it? Well, we now have a place for employees to go to find. That was what we were just talking about on the previous screen. A question we see time and time again then is why do we see so many of our HR service tickets around I don't understand, or I don't understand what the policy is saying to me, or how many days holiday do I have, etc. Is it because we can't consume content due to it being in so many places? i.e., it's great having links and directions to all the different platforms I've got, but that's still a cookie trail I have to follow everywhere to try and get an answer to a question. Where's the clear and precise tier zero? People don't actually, and I find this through quite interesting, people don't actually want to raise tickets. And I think often that's a misconception in HR, because we go out and we focus on market leading case management and ticket tools, when actually they might not necessarily be needed. And again, that's what we're doing at Applaud. We're looking at this differently. If we have that ability to create experiences where employees can come and consume content they need and avoid tickets being raised, that is something that we should be trying to do in all of our employee experience journeys. And we do this basically by bringing knowledge, help, FAQs into those moments that matter. And bringing that into that one place, again, like we're so used to in the outside world. Clearly, there are times when this might not necessarily work, and much like I spoke about on the previous slide, you might need to direct somebody off. We might need to create an integration off, of course, and that can be done. Sometimes it can feel complex, but actually when designed right, integrations can be done really well, and they can really help connect the employee with the downstream platforms, whether it's a core HCM, whether it's a case management tool, whether it's an expense system, without them needing to go there, because actually it can be operated from within Applaud. And that brings us on really to where we go next. So we've spoken about a place to go to find. We've spoken about a place where we can consume content, and that's great. But now we're moving through our employee experience journey in our program. So what about our processes or experiences, where the data showed us from what we've done to this point, probably, and again linking back to what Volker was taking us through, those processes are poor to interact with. They have poor touch points. Perhaps managers don't truly understand them. This will always cause challenges into employees, of course, but also back into HR, as they have to come in and pick up, you know, where the process broke down from. Perhaps, or simply, these processes may not have a home elsewhere, and that's an interesting one. We see this time and time again, where there's great intent to do really good stuff for employees, but the processes just don't have a natural home. You know, a great example, you know, we've seen time and time again over the last couple of years is onboarding. It's so critical, and not even always the pre-boarding bit, which tends to get good support from your ATS and your recruitment and onboarding teams, but actually day one onwards, day 1 to 30, day 1 to 90, you know, how are we supporting the employee through that? How are we giving them the content, the processes they need to complete? So again, that's an example of a process that often doesn't have a home, that sits really well in Applaud. And we do this because we're not just a UI layer. You know, the first 2 slides are very much around UI, I guess, and UX. But as we move through this digital transformation program, we can think about workflow that we have within Applaud. We've touched on integration already. That's going to digitalize these processes and optimize them. You know, these could be, as I said, onboarding moments. They could be hire to retire moments. They could be really, really time sensitive processes and moments like promotions, transfers, for example, benefit selection. You know, you could be doing this in Applaud, and you could have workflow and integration optimizing this and digitalizing this behind the scenes. But for the employee, you're getting that great consumer experience. And then we move on to the, I guess, not the scary bit, I guess, more the utopia bit, which is actually starting to think about, you know, we know we've got this great employee experience platform that's sort of working to better create better experiences based on the data we've collected. But what about actually if we want to try and meet the employee where they're spending most of the time? You know, arguably, you know, for the more advanced companies or the more advanced programs, you know, an employee experience platform can be seen as another piece of technology or another platform to log into. Well, what about if we actually challenged ourselves to allow the employee to stay where they are, whether that's in Slack or Teams or other channels, and actually use the toolkit we have of sort of integration and you know, workflow to really try and bring the two together and leave the employee where they are. This is the more advanced end. You know, good news is you don't have to do this from day one. We're having seeing some exciting things in this space with our customers, and it's truly becoming that sort of meeting the employee in the moment of work. But like I said, doesn't necessarily have to be part of that phase one. I think we've got we've got some questions coming through. Okay, good question. So I'm going to try and split these out, Volker, because I'm coming to the end of my slide, so that's good timing. So I'll take the first one. Surely EX is more than just HR-led processes, services, and journeys. Does an EXP not need to encompass more? Wow, great question. I love that we're thinking this way. Yeah, absolutely. And if it comes across a bit that way, that's just the wheelhouse of where we're talking from at the moment. But no, this has got to be business wide. You know, you've got to bring in your other business areas into this. You know, otherwise it's just going to be HR employee experience. You know, true employee experience will be across the workforce. It's also good when thinking about bringing in other business areas, when thinking about how to handle the budget. for the investment in this. You know, it doesn't just need to be seen as HR led. You can start to bring in other business areas as well. And what I really liked as well is the thought, and I think this came out in your slides as well, Volker, is most of the day-to-day interactions here are not between the employee and HR, it's between employee and the manager. And to think about that is really crucial here, because then it suddenly becomes a business problem. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you would add to that.
No, it's a great thought, and an always-on thought as well. We think very much in the terms of like think big, start small, and then iterate your way up. And when you do that, so think big means you have to have an overarching idea of what experiences are. Yeah. And of course, it goes beyond HR, because if you look at it in the way you should look at it, which is from the perspective of the employee, then of course, just imagine, like, I don't know, a warehouse picker. A warehouse picker will not find HR very important. Yeah. Much more important for a warehouse picker is if he or she can charge the forklift easily. Yeah. And therefore, that drastic example shows that if you look at things from the perspective of the employees, the whole world is changing. Now, how do you build that in? And Matt, I like your point of let's make it, let's do it in a way that the business can fund it. You have to show the business what's in it for the business, bottom line. And the 2-3 things that are really, really working well is attrition costs. If you have a part of the business where attrition is super high, do something about it. That is a business pain point. The other one is customer experience. If you need to provide a superior customer experience, let's say in your service centers, in your call centers, in your sales function, then make sure that the people that are responsible for providing a good experience to end customers are having a great experience themselves. So if you find those pockets where the experience language resonates in terms of business bottom line impact, let's say on attrition, let's say on customer experience, then you will likely find business co-sponsorship. If you can prove that, I don't know, through a better Slack type interaction between team leaders in the sales function and the salespeople, that has an impact. Yeah, that's where the conversation starts, and the business comes in as co-sponsors.
Couldn't agree more. Love it. Another good question. We've got a couple of minutes, and then I will pass over just for any final thoughts as well, Volker. So just to give you a pre-warning there as well. But just a question here. So okay, we got a few coming in. Do you recommend Big Bang, i.e. digitalizing majority of HR services at once, or a case-by-case approach? My view here is essentially I would approach it on a case-by-case basis, really, and start to look at actually what's going to be the most powerful here, what's going to add the most value, and get a minimal, viable, lovable product out as quickly as possible, and then build from there. I think you know, we've all been burnt in the past by the big bangs, you know, when it comes to big technology replacements. Would you share those thoughts, Volker, or add anything else there?
Absolutely. I made my point with start small, so think big, start small, iterate as you scale. So that's really, I think, basically the same thing. I'm a big fan of that, because if you start small, if you have impact in one pocket of the business, then it's not you have to push people hard for implementing a change. It's more they will ask you to implement the change with them. So yeah, it's much more a pull than a push, and that is really what is a big difference. I mean, all our big HR transformations have been a big push. They all have been very, very painful for many people. And therefore, if we had a way to turn that around and make it a pull, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Well, look, we look like we've nearly run the course today. So thank you for all the participation, everyone from the audience. Some great questions. Apologies, we're not going to probably get through all of the questions, but I think I guess I'll just pass back to you finally, Volker, and it could just be you know, a shameless plug here with your last slide here. I will do the same in a moment, but any old final thoughts you'd like to leave us with as well. So
yeah, I think the bottom line is pick your bets wisely, do it with data, because otherwise you will not be able to prove that it's an employee-led initiative that you're driving. Do it with data that speak the language of the employees and managers. Happy, like, of course, to have conversations if you wanted to use our approach for it, but that is the big thing. Like, pick your battles by using what's most, or by focusing on what's most important to employees and managers.
brilliant, thank you. And similarly, you know, again, here, you know, you can use the QR code to book a sort of a deeper dive session in with us, or contact us through the usual methods. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much, Volker, for joining us today. Really great, insightful conversation. You can see more contact details there to get in touch with us. Thank you for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. So many thanks from both of us.
Thank you, guys.